Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the FantasyPros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. With me are Mike Tagliere and Kyle Yates. You can find us on Twitter at DanHarris80, at Mike Tagliere NFL, and at Kyle Y NFL. This is the final waiver wire show of the 2020 season. Guys, how are you?
Dan, try and contain your excitement.
No, because we talked about it last week. It happens to the best of us. I was running on empty a little bit. I had a long weekend. I was really tired. Not anymore. I'm ready to go. I'm excited. And you know what? People are sitting out there and they're like, it's week 16, man. My team is awesome. I'm in the championship. I don't need waiver wire help. Excuse me, okay? An hour and a half before kickoff yesterday, we found out that Zeke was out. Tony Pollard was still available because somebody in my league was not listening to our show and stashing him. I picked him up, and he may be the reason why I am going to make it to the championship. And so you need waiver wires, no matter how strong your team is. You need it, and we are here to help. Yates, how you doing? You haven't even said anything yet.
I'm good. I wanted to talk to you guys before we started recording, though, before we got into the topic of today, because apparently you guys just have a ton of fun on Sunday. You sit down, you crack open a beer, and you just talk about me behind my back and don't think that I'm going to not hear about it. So got to talk about this, guys. You guys are just sitting here on the Sunday podcast just talking about me behind my back. I don't appreciate it.
Well, all right. What did we say? What did we say that was so bad? I mean, you are an optimistic Bears fan, which is, you would think, an oxymoron, but it's not for Yates. And you faded Jalen Hurts, and you're very upset about that. What did we say that wasn't true? What's wrong with that?
No, it's not. It's not true. It's just that you said it behind my back when I didn't have a chance to defend myself. Now, the optimistic Bears fan thing here, that the bar is set really low because for tags, I've never met a more pessimistic person in my life. So the bar is on the ground. So for me to be optimistic, it's just that it's just hovering a little bit above the ground there.
Yeah. That's fair. And tags, we should really.
That's fair.
No, that is.
I'm not the most pessimistic person ever. I'm the most pessimistic Bears fan.
Okay, that's also fair. That's fair. Maybe I can't judge the pessimistic person necessarily because all we really do is talk about football. But for the most part, as a Bears fan, that's definitely take the, and you admit that one, right?
I've been a Bears fan since I was a kid. I mean, I've had a lifetime full of regret, and I've mentioned a few times I'm adopting a stepchild. I'm going to have the Tennessee Titans as another child.
Oh my gosh.
To root for, which is very good because obviously the last time the Bears were a team that I could root for, I was 3 years old when they won the Super Bowl, so I don't remember crap about that. So, unfortunately, it's just, the way I think about sports, though, and Dan, tell me if I'm wrong here.
Yes.
Yates is, we all know how Yates feels about the Bears.
Yeah, you're wrong, but go ahead.
No. Tell me, if you're not going to win a Super Bowl, what should you be rooting for that team to do much of anything? It's almost like the idea of the Jets, right? They're not going to win a Super Bowl. They're not even going to make the playoffs, whatever.
Oh,
do you root for that team knowing that it's short-term goal, like it's a very short-sighted goal to win a football game, right? Where it's like you have to think about the team in general, and it's like, are you going to win a Super Bowl with Mitch Trubisky as your quarterback? The answer is no. I mean, right?
There's too much. There's too much here. There's too much. First of all, cry me a dang river with your Bears talk. Okay, seriously. Do you know who you're talking to? Like, legitimately, why don't you spend your entire life rooting for the Jets? Throw on the Knicks just to have fun. Throw on the Mets in a town where every one of your friends roots for the Yankees. And then come talk to me about being pessimistic. And then watch that game yesterday that the Jets played. Number 2, okay? Yeah. Don't tell me about we have Mitch Trubisky as our quarterback, so we can't win the Super Bowl. I watched a Mark Sanchez-led team nearly take us to a Super Bowl. Now, they didn't, so you want to say, fine. You can win a Super Bowl with Mitch Trubisky. Do I think you're going to win the Super Bowl this year? No, I do not. Okay, that is fair. And so if you want to improve your draft position, fine. But no, man, root for your team to win. You're in that gray area. You're not the Jets where a win basically alters your franchise future. Like, win a game.
I refuse to let them lure me in, and because you become emotionally invested when you give it all for a team and you're rooting for them on Sundays. I remember that feeling, and I also remember the feeling of defeat. And again, watching this team, even when they were 5-1, I talked about it on this show, and I said the Bears are not 5-1. They're not just don't operate like they're 5-1. They're not that team. Yeah. And then obviously they went on that long losing streak. So it's like I'm unwilling to give all of my heart to the Chicago Bears until I know that they're a team that can compete in the playoffs.
All right. Well, that's about all the time we have today, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros. Literally, we would talk forever. The last thing I will say, Tags, is if you are indeed adopting a stepchild as the Tennessee Titans, as your stepchild team, then I would like you to also adopt Will as your actual stepchild, since, as you know, since I sent you, Will spends his entire day in a Tennessee Titans helmet that I got him and no shirt watching football. So that's what he's in right now. I could go get him. He's got that Tennessee Titans helmet on. So he's a big Titans fan. He's all yours going forward. But anyway, look, we're going to talk actually about some waiver wire today, but the season is winding down. And if you win the championships, that's amazing, right? But for like a few days or a week. And after that, you kind of forget, which is why you need something to memorialize it, like a trophy or a ring or a belt. And you can get all of that over at fantasypros.com/shop. We have a ton of trophies, rings, and belts from our friends over at Trophy Smack. We've been playing fantasy football for years. It is very difficult to remember all the years that you win championships or anything like that, unless, like me, you have a ring or a bobblehead or a trophy with a guy with a beer belly and a remote control. That's one of my favorites. Or a belt like the one I'm holding up right now from Trophy Smack. Go to youtube.com/fantasypros to see that belt, by the way. I highly recommend it. Anyway, memorialize your championship with one of over 1,000 trophy combinations that you can customize by size, column, color, plaque, quote, and trophy topper. While you're there, get some apparel, by the way. Shirts, hats, hoodies, bottles, thermoses, and more. We've got some great gear. It's all comfortable. I am working at the moment of making sure we get out a "That is the correct answer" shirt, which I am going to buy and wear every time I podcast, I promise. Again, fantasypros.com/shop. All right, guys, it is the Waiver Wire Show. You know what we do by now. We'll talk about the notable pickups at running back, wide receiver, quarterback, and then tight end. We'll talk about our top 5 overall, our top QB and DST streamers. And then we'll do a modified drop or keep. Since it's week 15, it'll be more of a week 16 focused game. Minor news before we start. Jalen Hurts is going to start for the Eagles this weekend, and I think I can speak for Yates when I say that when I saw that news come across Twitter, my first reaction was the Phoebe Buffet gif saying, "That is brand new information." Thank you for making Jalen Hurts the quarterback. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is almost certainly out for next week and potentially the remainder of the regular season. Ben Roethlisberger plans to play next year, and Stephon Gilmore has a partially torn quad, and he is out for the year. The Patriots take on Buffalo next week. Okay, let's start with running backs. Let's start with you, Yates. Tags did more talking early on. Let's start with you, Yates. Who's your number one running back pickup this week?
Yeah, my number one running back waiver pickup is Salvon Ahmed. I've talked about him before on the podcast, saying that I'm a big fan of Salvon Ahmed and his tape. I thought that him coming into the NFL was just going to be a fantastic addition to an NFL team. However, he ran slow at the combine, ended up going undrafted. We've seen in different spurts this season that he's been able to contribute in a big way. And yesterday, big performance, could have been even bigger. He was marked down at like the half-inch line. Otherwise, he would have had 2 touchdowns there. So, yeah, I think Salvon Ahmed is going to be my main pickup here. However, he does have the question hanging over him of, okay, Myles Gaskin may be coming back to the lineup after missing the past 2 games with COVID there. So, okay, what does the workload actually look like when you have both of these guys on the field? Does Myles Gaskin take the full workload? Does Salvon Ahmed factor in? So it's not a clear, like, hey, let's go add this guy, because I think he can absolutely be a smash spot for Week 16. But in the event that we get throughout the week and Myles Gaskin doesn't end up coming off the COVID list, then you do have a guaranteed starter here up against the Las Vegas Raiders defense, which is a fantastic matchup.
If we find out in the middle of the week or before waivers run that Myles Gaskin, is coming back this week, are you still looking to pick up Ahmed? And do you think he could potentially be somebody who you would start, given that we're going to have a question mark about what the workload is, but it's kind of difficult to see Ahmed just being like, okay, you're going to get 5 touches this week. Like, you figure he'll be involved, right?
Right. You would figure he would be involved, but it's just going to be a matter of, okay, what's the level of trust that you have in that in Week 16, right? And how many other available options? If you're in the championship, you most likely have a pretty deep roster. You have a pretty solid roster. So I guess it all depends on what your running back situation looks like. He'll probably, if Myles Gaskin comes back to the lineup, and if we don't get the word, if Brian Flores comes out and says Myles Gaskin is going to be the clear starter, whatever, then, if we have that unclarity,
no, not a word.
Yep.
Go ahead.
If we have that lack of clarity, then Myles Gaskin will probably be a mid-range running back 3 for me.
Okay. How about you, Tags? We talked about it last night. First, is Ahmed your number one RB pickup of the week?
Well, first off, I'm not going to let you slide on the whole fact that you said GIF.
It's GIF.
No, it's not.
No, it's
not.
GIF.
Do
It's
not even play into that. It's
Okay.
Not. It's GIF.
The person
It's
who
graphics
created it.
interchange format.
I'm well aware of what it stands for.
I don't think you do.
Kyle Yates.
I don't think you do. GIF.
Giraffics interchange format.
The person who created it, okay, called
what he's
it
talking
a
about.
GIF. Then it's a GIF. That's how it works, guys. Okay,
That's not the correct answer.
Tags, we're going to skip you for this podcast. Tags, who is your number one running back pickup of the week? Is it Ahmed?
It is Ahmed. He's the only running back that you should even consider picking up off the waiver wire this week, honestly. Gaskin, we haven't heard a single thing, and teams have been able to be tight-lipped about this stuff, and COVID has affected different people in different ways. Myles Gaskin, obviously he tested positive. We've seen Larry Fitzgerald lose some weight, talk about like changing his lifestyle because of it. We watched Myles Garrett dealing with some issues because of it. So it could be affecting Myles Gaskin in a way that it may not affect another running back. He might come back and have no limitations. This is a situation where we need to pay attention to the coaches throughout the week, but fortunately against the Raiders, it's a matchup that you can exploit with probably more than one running back. You know, the Dolphins are limited in pass catchers in terms of, Devontae Parker. If he comes back, he's still dealing with a hamstring injury. Mike Gesicki was dealing with a shoulder injury. Preston Williams is still out of the lineup. Jakeem Grant might be out of the lineup. Lynn Bowden is just a guy. Yep. So you look at the Raiders, and before that game on Thursday night against the Chargers, this team had allowed at least 124 rushing yards in each of their last three games to the Falcons, the Jets, and the Colts running backs. So I do believe that there's plenty of opportunity here for Ahmed to produce. So if you're in need of a running back, I absolutely think that he's the pickup. And if Gaskin misses this game, Ahmed would be teetering on probably like a high-end RB2 start.
Yes, I agree with that, actually. Exactly where you're putting him in terms of your rankings. He would be a really kind of borderline RB1. He probably would fall just outside of that. And again, I do want to not dispel the notion necessarily, because yes, if you're going into your championship matchup, there are also teams, by the way, that may have lost this weekend but are playing for third place and still have something to play for. But if you play for your championship, I'm sure you have a strong roster, but we talked about it. That's not always the case. Again, I picked up Tony Pollard and played him because it was him or Raheem Mostert who had these question marks. There are teams who might have made it, you might have been decimated by injury. So certainly Ahmed could be the guy who's going to help you. I agree with you that he is my top running back pickup of the week. But there is another guy I'm out there looking at, Yates. Is there anybody else who you're looking at? Because Tag said really he's the only guy. Is there anybody else who you think might be able to help you this week?
Not particularly. Okay. I think you can make the case for Lynn Bowden Jr. again in full PPR formats if you do have Gesicki, Grant, and Parker miss again. But other than that, I mean, Frank Gore is just a guy. Devine Ozigbo is just a guy up against Chicago. It's not really a matchup I'm looking to exploit.
Even if James Robinson's out, let me ask both of you, because we've got two things. James Robinson, his injury leaves him a little questionable. They've shown they're just willing to kind of play him no matter what, but they, of course, have nothing to play for. And what about Darrel Williams, guys? I mean, we know Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to miss this game. Le'Veon Bell got banged up at the end of that game. I know that they don't rely on the run game at all, but still, whoever the running back is for the Chiefs should be heavily involved. And even if it's Le'Veon Bell, he's not going to get 100% of the touches back there. So why isn't Williams somebody? I get that it's against Atlanta. It's not a good matchup for running backs, but the Chiefs are kind of, they're defense breakers, whatever you want to call them. So Tags, Ozigbo or Darrel Williams, neither one of these guys is remotely on your radar then.
No, you hit on the head. You talked about, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not going to play. Cool. Yep. I mean, what has Clyde Edwards-Helaire done recently and he's been actually really good in terms of efficiency, like his yards per carry. It's just the Chiefs don't run the ball. They're not getting a whole lot of push up front. It's kind of like the Steelers, and that's the reason they're throwing the ball a ton. Going into that matchup against Atlanta has allowed the second fewest fantasy points on the ground to running backs. So it really just doesn't suit his skill set unless he's heavily involved in the passing game. Right. And I don't think that we could project that. And then you go to Ozigbo and you say, you're playing against the Bears. Like, if you break it down in terms of, all right, so we have these stats that I'm trying to work it into a tool next year that we could offer on the website, is working with some of the developers. And if you were to look at the competition that the Bears have played this year and look at what they average on a per touch basis in non-Bears games compared to what they average versus the Bears are the toughest schedule adjusted matchup for running backs, allowing negative 0.15 points per touch to running backs, fewer than what they average in non-Bears games. So I know it's hard to describe that over a podcast, but basically the Bears are legitimately one of the worst matchups you could ask for with a running back. And even if it were James Robinson out there getting 18 touches against the Bears, I don't think that I would put him in top 12 territory. So if you say Ozigbo splitting, work with someone like Darrel Williams, I'm not really going to like him much at all. I think Ozigbo, he'd probably be in that like Frank Gore territory. As guys you really don't want to play, but they're guys that are going to get touches. So if you're in a dire like RB4 territory, if you need someone, I guess that's going to get touches, sure, but you don't want to.
All right, I'm going to ignore the fact that you said that you might not put James Robinson in your top 12 against the Bears, because if he plays, he's in your top 12. Tag.
Dude, there's 32 teams playing this weekend. It's not like bye weeks. When there are bye weeks, yeah, there's no way you can get him out of the top 12, but James Robinson looks cooked, man. He looks like a guy that's been playing way too much all year long. The snaps have finally caught up with him. His efficiency has dipped the last 2 weeks. And then going against the Bears, I don't see a top 12 finish.
Yates, break the tie out of curiosity. Do you think you'll have James Robinson ranked as a top 12 back this week if he plays against the Bears?
I'm just completely excluding the injury.
Yeah, let's just say he's healthy. He's good to go.
I mean, I had James Robinson at 10 this week up against Baltimore. So, and that was with Calais Campbell out of the lineup. So against the Bears defense, I would have him probably as a high-end RB2.
When's the last time James? Well, you know what? This is not a James Robinson podcast. Okay, we'll get into that. We'll get into that on our Slack message. Board, whatever. Okay, let's go to wide receivers. Now I'm just fired up. Let's go. I'm so mad. James Robinson, don't worry. I have your back, man. I've had your back all year. Okay. Every time somebody asked me this guy or James Robinson, I would be like James Robinson, because you never disappoint, even when you had a terrible game against Baltimore and you were, clearly feeling the effect. You had that beautiful touchdown catch. Don't worry, we've got your back here. Let's go to wide receiver. Yes.
By the way, James Robinson has finished outside the top 18 running backs in 4 of his last 6 games.
Okay, I'm not going to hear it.
I'm not
going to hear anything about ranking James Robinson outside the top 12. Okay? I'm just not going to hear it. End of podcast. Done. Wide receiver. Who is your number 1 wide receiver pickup this week? Michael J. Tagliere.
Michael J.
I don't know what your middle name is. That just came out. What do you got?
It's Rashard Higgins. I mean,
that's your middle name?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Oh my goodness.
Rashard Higgins. That was bad, Dan.
They can't all be winners, Gates. Go ahead, Tag.
You gotta set the bar really low for those other ones to hit.
Oh my!
Go ahead, Rashard Higgins. Rashard Higgins, the receiver for the Cleveland Browns, is your number 1 wide receiver pickup. Go ahead, Tag.
Wow, yes, he is. So now, there have been now 5 games where Rashard Higgins has played without Odell Beckham, in games that haven't had like 40-mile-an-hour winds and a lot of rainfall. In those games, he's finished with 6 catches for 110 yards. 1 catch for 15 yards, which really sucks. 6 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown. 6 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown. And then you go into last week's game. In that game, what did he finish with? 6 catches for 70.
This week was
yards?
4 for 76.
6 for 68 last week.
Yeah, but so basically he's performed in 4 of those 5 games. He's performed as a top 30 wide receiver, and there's really almost no reason to doubt him. And then you look at this Jets matchup, and again, we talked about it last week, Dan, you and I, about Cam Akers and the fact that matchup was always going to be tough against the Jets. After that game, the Jets now rank as the 5th toughest matchup for running backs in terms of weighted opportunity and what players are scoring against them. Now, volume has carried some players to higher performances, but in reality, you want to throw the ball against this team. That secondary is just depleted. They have nobody there. We should expect Baker Mayfield, who is red hot, by the way, to light up that secondary. And Rashard Higgins has proven to be the number 2 option right behind Jarvis Landry. And I don't even want to say number 2 because it's almost like a 1A, 1B situation because they play different positions where Landry's playing a lot of the slot snaps. So Higgins is someone that I'm probably going to have ranked as a top 6 wide or top 36 wide receiver.
Oh.
Thank you for clarifying. By the way, thank you for that. Yep. I mean, you'll see if you should watch the YouTube channel and see what my reaction is when that first came out. I looked like I had been. I don't know. Go ahead, Tag. Sorry.
Yeah, a top 36 wide receiver this week. I'm probably going to have him in that wide receiver 3 territory against the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, it was he was more appealing this week because we saw Bradbury was out, but you watched that game. First of all, Baker Mayfield is playing at a really high level, really high right now. And I love the way Collinsworth was breaking down sort of his mechanics in that game. But Higgins was really, he is playing very well. He's making contested catches. Mayfield has a lot of confidence in him. So he actually is not my number one. He's my number 2 wide receiver, but I've got absolutely no problem. And ranking him as a top 36, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where I'm going to have him ranked when I do my week 16 rankings. Yates, is Higgins your number 1 wide receiver on the week?
He is, and it's for a lot of the same reasons that Tags mentioned, and specifically the matchup. Going up against the Jets, you start your opposing wide receivers, or you start your wide receivers against the Jets. And looking at Rashard Higgins, we talked about it, like, finished as the wide receiver 8 in week 13, the wide receiver 15 against Baltimore in week 14, and then now is the wide receiver 34. We still have the games tonight to play, but that's solid production from Rashard Higgins. And we talked about him earlier on this season on the Waiver Wire podcast, and I mentioned him, and then that was like the game that I think that it was the crazy wind or something like that, where it fell flat, and I think everyone just kind of wrote him off after that. But I've always liked Higgins as a talent, and I think that he could contribute in a bigger opportunity, and it's proving here, and especially up against the Jets. Yeah, I'm going to have him as a top 36, not top 6, but top 36 wide receiver.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, anybody else here, Tags? Who's your number 2 pickup then on the week for wide receiver?
The number 2 is really, it's a mess, to be honest with you. I think I can make the case for like 5 different guys to go there. The one that I'd be considering is John Brown, just because he was practicing most of last week and then was ruled out because they had the game a little bit early in the week. So I think John Brown was ready to play. They just wanted to basically take it easy on him. They were going against Denver. It didn't seem like a week where they had to push him. Now, again, they've locked up their playoff berth. I don't think that they need to push anything here, but the Patriots, without Stephon Gilmore, they were a team that you attack through the air, and Josh Allen's playing so well right now, and they don't run the football. You know, they're a team that legitimately has basically just said, you know what, we really don't even care. We're just going to let Josh Allen drop back to pass, and if he doesn't see anything run with the ball, he's our run game, basically, because the running backs, I think, are combining for like 22 touches per game or something like that. It's really low. So I kind of like John Brown, but at the same time, I don't think I can confidently recommend someone to start him in his first game back after a 4-week absence. So he was one of those guys that, like, when I was doing the waivers, I was so torn on him. I didn't know what to do, but I could absolutely see a situation where he kind of pops off. But I don't really think I want to start anybody else outside of Rashard Higgins on waivers.
Yeah, Brown is way down on my list for that very reason. Tags, it's that obviously there is no future value in this, right? This is it. It's a 1-week play at this point. And while I agree now, without Stephon Gilmore, Brown becomes much more appealing. The bottom line is, you're right. We don't know what we're going to see. Remember, he came back from injury last time, and he was barely involved for 2 games, and we sort of were like, well, he's probably overcoming the nagging injury, and then finally he was healthy, and he exploded, and then he got injured again. At this point, there'd just be no way for me to trust necessarily that he is fully healthy or that they're going to get him fully involved. So there's no way I will start him this week, which is why he's way down my list. What about you, Yates? Who's your number 2?
My number 2 is Russell Gage, building off of, he's now scored a touchdown in 3 straight games, and I think that we just continuously look over Russell Gage and kind of just write him off in this offense, but he's producing. And so I think up against Kansas City too, this is going to be, with Atlanta, similar to Buffalo. They're just saying, we're not going to run the ball. We can't run the ball, so we're just going to throw it a ton. And that leads to a ton of passing volume here and targets for Russell Gage, and he's producing. So in this matchup up against Kansas City, not a great matchup for opposing wide receivers, but yet you have to expect that he's going to see 7, 8, 9 targets in this one yet again, and I think that he can be ranked as a mid-range wide receiver 3 this week. So, yeah, I think that you can confidently plug him into your lineup next week, which makes him an intriguing waiver wire ad.
He's my number 1 wide receiver, slightly ahead of Higgins, but again, 1A, 1B situation. I like both of them this week. Yeah, Tags, I was, interested. I kind of expected you to say Gage as one of your guys. And again, I know the matchup is not great, but like Gates correctly said, the Falcons are appropriately pretty much abandoning the run. Now, maybe they won't do that quite as much. This game was against the Bucs, so you're not going to be able to run against the Bucs. You can run against the Chiefs more than you can even throw on them, but it's going to be a shootout. I mean, the Chiefs can put up as many points as they want on the Falcons because they're going to be able to exploit them through the air. So I imagine that the Falcons are going to be throwing a lot. Gage saw 10 targets. He does have touchdowns in 3 straight games. One of those, of course, was a passing touchdown, but still, he's very involved, Tag. So Gage isn't a guy who's at all on your radar, huh?
He's not someone I want to play this week. I talked to you guys about Matt Ryan last week and the fact that I liked him more because I felt like they weren't going to be able to run the ball. Like they basically should have abandoned it altogether because the Bucs have allowed some production through the air. But this matchup, it's it's like beating a dead horse. I have to keep telling people, like, stop, because everybody wants to continue to play wide receivers against the Chiefs thinking, oh, it's going to be a shootout. The Chiefs are going to score a ton of points. It's going to be a shootout. They're going to see a lot of targets. This, that. No, it's the worst narrative out there. I swear to God. If you look at it, wide receivers have accounted for a league low 52% of targets against the Chiefs. That's the lowest in the league. If you go back to the start of last year when they brought in they switched over to the 4-3 scheme, this defense is allowing fewer yards to wide receivers than any other team in the league, including the Patriots. I don't think many people realize that. They talk about the Patriots last year and say how dominant they were against every position. Well, the Chiefs allowed fewer yards per game to wide receivers. This year, the only team that's allowing fewer yards than them, and it's by 14 yards, is the Rams. And the Rams, we don't want to start any wide receivers against. So why are we continually approaching the Chiefs like a team that we want to attack? They've allowed 132.8 yards per game to wide receivers this year. That is terrible. So even when they are getting targets, I mentioned the fact that they're barely getting targeted. Even when they do get targeted, they're averaging 1.62 PPR points per target, which is the fourth lowest mark in the league. I don't think Russell Gage is a difference maker. I think he's a fine football player, but I think that he's a guy that relies on volume. And if the volume is not guaranteed against Kansas City, who, by the way, gets after the passer, Matt Ryan has really struggled under pressure. I don't know how to feel about this. They've allowed the second fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers this year. And it's the same reason that I was a little bit down on Emmanuel Sanders last week. Everybody ran out there and saying, oh, Michael Thomas is out. Emmanuel Sanders is a must start, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. And I'm like, are we forgetting that the Chiefs are actually a good football team and they have a good defense? It's something that everybody latches onto. And that's why I wanted to harp on it so much, because I think that everybody just believes it to be true. And it's one of those things that it's just a false narrative out there.
So I agree, generally speaking, with everything you're saying with the matchup. The one thing is, because I thought about this, Tex, I thought about it with how I was going to look at Gage, who's a guy who, I was debating in a league that I had about whether to start him this week, and now you're looking at next week. By the way, this is all assuming that Julio Jones is out. Again, He wants to play. He is trying to play. Kudos to him. He's basically a favorite of our podcast. We think is an immense talent. I'm going to assume that if he does come back, it's not going to be until next week. So I'm just assuming he's out here. The one thing is, Tags, you look at who the Chiefs have played and you look at the quality of the wide receivers. Now, it's a good defense. I'm not taking anything away from their receiving defense, but let's just go through a little bit. You've got the Saints, where Drew Brees, by the way, of course, did not look great and was against Michael Thomas. The Dolphins, they don't really run through their wide receivers. Denver twice, the receivers aren't particularly productive there. They've got the Bucs fine. They've got the Raiders twice. Their offense doesn't run through the wide receivers. Carolina fine. The Jets, Buffalo, all right, fine, I'll give you that. But the Pats, Baltimore, it's a lot of teams, Tags, that they don't really, the quality of the wide receivers and the general layout of the offense doesn't really run through the wide receiver anyway. The Falcons, for the most part, you're going to have Calvin Ridley involved and you're going to have Russell Gage involved and they're going to pass a lot. That's why I'm a little less pessimistic, I'll say, about Russell Gage's outlook. Do you understand?
And this is exactly why I wanted to create this tool, though, because I agree with you to a certain extent, because you have to start wondering about the competition they've played and how strength of schedule is factored into that. So in that tool that I want to help create with our developers, basically the Chiefs, I can see right now, they rank as the, 8th toughest matchup for wide receivers so it's 8th toughest. It's not like the 2nd toughest like I talked about. It's the 8th toughest, which is still wide receivers are averaging 0.11 fewer PPR points per target against the Chiefs than they do in non-Chiefs games. So it's still definitely a below average matchup. It's not as bad as sometimes it seem, but this all comes back to the Chiefs basically controlling the clock, the Chiefs getting a pass rush on Matt Ryan. And if Julio is out, yes, the target volume is going to be there, but I just don't think Russell Gage is going to be a guy that's going to carry people to a fantasy title is all.
Well, the only thing I heard from all of that is that new tool being developed, our tools are going to be even bigger and better than they were in the past, which I didn't think was possible, but that's amazing. I look forward to it. Okay. Anybody else? Let me throw out a couple other names here. You guys can tell me whether or not you like them. Chad Hansen caught the touchdown yesterday, but, he went from 7 targets in each of the 2 previous games to just 3 yesterday. Jacoby Myers randomly bounced back with the big game here against the Dolphins. Again, tough secondary, so the fact that he's got probably Tre'Davious White, maybe something that you don't fear quite as much. And, of course, Darnell Mooney at Jacksonville Tags. We touched on it a little bit last night as potentially an intriguing option against Jacksonville. I'll go to Yates. Yates, any of those 3 guys at all register on your radar this week?
Yeah, they definitely register. Darnell Mooney is probably the most intriguing because of the matchup against Jacksonville and the fact that he seems to have clearly surpassed Anthony Miller. as the second option on this team, but yet at the same time, he's not going to be anything more than a low-end flex play. In my rankings, Chad Hansen is intriguing as well up against Cincinnati. You're looking at that matchup, and I mean, David Johnson, what did he only run the ball 8 times yesterday, but yet 11 targets, 11 receptions, or something crazy. Like, they just were not keen on running the ball. Now, that was Indianapolis, so they could turn back to the run game here, but David Johnson's not been particularly efficient. So I think that Chad Hansen has an excellent chance of finding the end zone yet again this week. But again, he's going to be that low-end flex play in my rankings for Week 16, as we are taking this 1 week at a time at this point. And Jacoby Myers, I don't want to go anywhere near him. I don't want to rely on Cam Newton and his arm at this point of the season. So yeah, he's off my radar.
How about you, Tags? Hansen, Myers, Mooney. Any one of them have any sort of value to you this week?
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested in Myers and Hansen if you're desperate. Myers, the last time they played the Bills, he did catch 6 passes for 58 yards on 10 targets, which, again, Cam Newton's not very good, but that's 5.8 yards per target. But he still finishes the wide receiver 28 that week. Buffalo, they have allowed 17 different wide receivers to finish with double-digit PPR points against them. 8 of those wide receivers are slot-heavy wide receivers, which is where Jacoby Myers just played the majority of his snaps. So it is a good matchup for him. Chad Hansen, a little disappointing to see the 3 targets last week for sure, but I don't think we see David Johnson getting 11 targets again. Right. So that's a plus matchup if you're really searching for someone. Again, these are all guys I actually had in that same territory where I talked about John Brown, where I was just like, I can make a case, I think, for some of these guys, but there's uncertainty around them all. I think Jalen Reagor is a guy that you can make a case for with how well Jalen Hurts threw the ball last week, and then you look at the Cowboys matchup and you say, well, when wide receivers are targeted in that against them, they're just straight up dominating. I mean, they're averaging over 2 PPR points per target. So Jalen Reagor, he's another one. It's like a dart throw. It's like if you're looking for upside against Dallas, that's it, because both of those teams, the Eagles and the Cowboys, in terms of total plays per game, they both rank in the top 5. So that game should net a lot of volume. So Reagor is like worth a Hail Mary. If again, this is only if you're looking for someone like just to throw in your lineup. You're saying screw it. I'm willing to take on some risk in order to gain the reward. Reagor, I guess, belongs in that conversation too.
How about what if? I mean, he played. Now he was limited in this game, so we assume with 10 days he's going to be able to play. But if Mike Williams or Keenan Allen were out in this game, any interest in Tyron Johnson? I'll ask you against Denver Yates.
Yeah, I think you can definitely consider him. Obviously he would get a bump up if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams play, but I'm assuming with the extended, absence or the extended distance between the games that I expect them both to be back on the field. But with Tyron Johnson, I think he's kind of in that same territory that Tag said. Like, you just put him in your lineup as a dart throw, and you're just hoping that he finds the end zone. He's been involved in the past couple of games. He's actually looked pretty good. And, of course, found the end zone last week. But he's, again, one of those low-end flex plays that you're just hoping is able to find the end zone to kind of push your team over the top.
All right, let's go to quarterbacks here. And I'm going to start with you, Yates. What I'm really wondering is if there is any quarterback out there that is rostered in 35.5% of leagues who you think maybe, I don't know, could potentially be a pickup this week for fantasy managers. Anybody like that who could, surpass expectations? Anything like that going on out there?
I owe Jalen Hurts an apology. I faded Jalen Hurts this past week. It did not work out, obviously.
Hold on. I want to stop just because I do want to cut you a little bit of slack, Yates. We were joking about it earlier today where we were like, man, Tags, I expected you to have Hurts ranked like 20th or something coming into the week. You had him, as your 15th ranked quarterback?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had him at 15. So it was more so the fact that I had him as my sit of the week. I was looking at ECR. ECR had him up at 12 throughout the early part of the week last week, and I had him as a sit. I just wasn't willing to buy in based on, again, like my background of studying these guys in college. And Tags, you can speak to this too because I know you scouted Jalen Hurts. With his time at Alabama and Oklahoma, coming into the NFL, I was not super impressed. I thought that he had a lot of developing left to do. I thought that it was going to take an offense to really retool their entire system around his skill set as a mobile quarterback. I did not see him coming out here and throwing, what the heck did he throw for? 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards. Like, up against Arizona, I did not see this coming. And so based on what I had, the background, the experience and history that I was pulling off of here with watching Jalen Hurts. So, man, I was wrong, though. This guy absolutely needs to be in your starting lineup against Dallas in your fantasy football championship.
Yeah, well, you should apologize to him again for not also mentioning his rushing touchdown yesterday.
Right.
Four total touchdowns. Yes, in case you missed the game, I know
I was
you weren't
speaking
really watching.
specifically to him as a passer. But
I
yes,
understand.
yeah.
I understand. Yes, that's fine. Tags, this is a no-brainer, of course. Jalen Hurts is your number one quarterback pickup, right?
Absolutely. Number one.
So let's just, guys, I don't want to hold us to it. It's a waiver wire show. But again, we've got 1 week. We don't have multiple weeks. So let's just ballpark it right now, because I asked you last night, Tags, Yates, ballpark it right now. He's a Dallas. This is what I said, by the way. I did a waiver wire video for our YouTube channel. It's going to be up probably before you listen to this podcast. And what I said about Jalen Hurts is, if you don't have, I put it as a top 4 quarterback, just as sort of a cutoff. A top 4 quarterback, if your opponent doesn't have a top 4 quarterback, if anybody playing for anything that could possibly affect you doesn't have a top 4 quarterback, you have to pick up Jalen Hurts, because I feel like he's going to be at least in that range of a mid-tier QB1 in this matchup. Yates, do you think that is incorrect?
I don't think that's incorrect. I will probably have him around 6 or 7 in my quarterback rankings, especially when you factor in the matchup up against Dallas. You got to start him.
What about you, Tex? Because I feel like you were a little less sort of optimistic about where you'd rank him last night when we talked.
Was I?
I thought you were more like low-end QB1.
No, I was saying I'd probably have him top 8. I just don't know.
Okay.
I couldn't say off like the top of my head. I knew he'd be top 10, but I didn't know if I'd be willing to go into top 8. But like I said, I just started like going into matchups today, looking through some things, and as I mentioned, that this game is going to net a ton of plays between the Cowboys and the Eagles. And on top of that, the Eagles they have passed the ball 62.9% of the time, which is the 6th most in football. The Cowboys are not used to that. And basically, the Eagles don't have the run game to do it. Their offensive line is really banged up, so they're just kind of masking some things. I'm expecting them to throw the ball a little bit more on Dallas than Dallas is really used to. And if you look at actually, like in terms of like fantasy points per pass attempt, the Cowboys are one of the worst teams in the league. I mean, despite seeing just 31.9 pass attempts per game, they've allowed 30 passing touchdowns. That's the second most in the NFL to only the Jaguars. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts is he's going to be up there for sure.
Yeah, really remarkable and kind of awesome to watch. Just, how the offense looks at this point.
Do you guys believe in setting a trap for your opponents?
What did you say?
Do you believe in setting a trap for your opponents? Like, let's pretend that you have Russell Wilson, and somehow you made it through last week with Russell Wilson.
No. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Would you drop Russell Wilson, tempting your opponent to pick him up to play him against the Rams?
That is such a wonderful question, Tags, and I have a feeling we're going to address that in roughly 10 to 12 minutes when we get to drop or keep. What about that? All right,
nice.
There's a teaser, I like where your head's at, Tags. Absolutely, I do like that, although I worry that it could burn you. Tags, let's assume that Jalen Hurts was picked up last week, where I believe you and I both had him as the number 1 pickup last week, so hopefully people listen to us. Mm-hmm. Any other quarterback that you are looking at here? And you I think you mentioned he's too highly rostered to really fall into our waiver wire rankings. But again, at this point, if you're available in 30-35% of leagues, so someone like Mayfield might be your number 2. Is that where you were going with that?
Baker would be my number 2 if he were available. I thought he'd be available in more leagues because I do the weekend waiver wire streaming piece, and Hurts was someone that was in there 2 weeks ago, so he was already someone that should have been rostered. But Mayfield was in there last week, and he was like right around 40% owned, and now all of a sudden there's a lot more ownership of him. So if Mayfield's not there, I would say Trubisky is the only other guy that I would think that those should be like the 3 guys that you would you'd consider. The weird part, though, in Yates, you tell me, the Bears truther over here, I need you to tell me, because the Bears in the game yesterday, I should say, against the Vikings, they didn't drop back to throw the ball a whole lot. Right. I'm wondering if they're playing it close to the vest, because the Bears, their playoff hopes are basically on the hinges. They have to keep winning. That's what has to happen. Against the Jaguars, they really should, obviously. You can kind of do whatever you want against the Jags. David Montgomery's been playing extremely well. Are you worried about another run-heavy game script from a team that the Bears? They were, even with that game last week where they threw the ball 23 times. The Bears are number 4 in terms of passing play percentage. Even in neutral game scripts, they're way up there. But is last week a sign of things to come and a worrisome sign for Trubisky?
Yeah, you definitely have to consider it. I talked about Trubisky on the Friday podcast, I think, with you, Dan, saying you projecting 30, 35, maybe even up to 40 pass attempts in this game. And then, you see Montgomery come out and get 32, 33 carries or something like that. Yeah. So part of that, too, I think, was that you saw Cordell Patterson banged up. So that's why Montgomery got as heavy of a workload as he did. But yeah, I think against Jacksonville, you certainly have to be concerned. So I'm not going to have Trubisky up in my top 12. I had him at 12 this past week because I was expecting a little bit more of that passing volume there. Sure, he always has the possibility of turning the ball over. But yeah, he'd been playing extremely well up to this point. So yeah, I think up against Jacksonville though, man, you got to start your fantasy weapons up against Jacksonville. So Trubisky will probably be at like 15, 14 in my quarterback rankings because he can easily find the end zone a couple times up against Jacksonville with the receiving weapons that he has. But yeah, you absolutely have to be concerned if that passing volume isn't going to be up towards 30 plus. You have to be concerned. And I think you mentioned like still fourth highest. That was because with Nick Foles and them jumping behind as much as they were still, it's so inflated from that period.
So I will add in one guy who I've gotten a lot of questions about actually, and it's Marcus Mariota. Yeah. I know he goes against Miami, so it's a generally a strong defense. But I mean, with the way Mariota looked in that last game, just with the value that he's going to offer with his legs, you guys are saying that you would prefer someone like Trubisky because of the matchup over Mariota. Do you think that was much more of the fact that he was coming in the middle of the game and team didn't have time to prepare for him, or what? I'll go to you, Yates.
I actually have Mariota at 3, and I wanted to talk about him. So I think that you can absolutely consider him if you are in a pinch. Now, he's probably going to be a little bit lower. Again, we're ranking, we're just going into this as our waiver wire rankings and saying, okay, who are we going to have ranked the highest in week 16 because that's all that's left. So Mariota, I think, will be at like 17 or 18 in my quarterback rankings just off the top of my head. So I think you can absolutely consider him, though, because of his rushing ability. We saw him find the end zone last week, rack up, 60, 70 yards off the top of my head. I'm looking it up. 88 rushing yards, actually. So I think, you can definitely look at him to provide that safe floor, and then he looked great as a passer. Now, I get the matchup. It's not great. And if you're looking at Nelson Aguilar and Henry Ruggs trying to beat, Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, probably not going to work out too well. But you have Darren Waller. You have Josh Jacobs. You have the ability to be able to move the ball. And I think if Mariota can provide what he did on the ground last week, then he's a safe option for you.
How about you, Tags? Any interest whatsoever in Mariota?
Not in single quarterback leagues, I don't. In 2 quarterback leagues, sure. I mean, as long as Carr is out for the game. But I think we saw, like, when Mariota first came in that game, like, he looked like it was like, whoa. I remember saying in a message to you guys, I was like, that might have been the best pass I've ever seen him throw in the NFL. As he was going off to his left, throwing the ball against where his body was going, and it was just right on the money. But as the game went on, you saw more and more of the guy that the Titans let go because it was just like he's been so inconsistent over the course of his career. I do not expect anything against Miami. Miami's been a team that's allowed just 18.4 points per game, which is less than any other team in the NFL, not named the Steelers. So there's no ceiling here for Marcus Mariota. The 88 rushing yards he had last week, that was the second most he's ever had in his career. I think it's more to do with the fact that he wasn't built into the game plan. It's like, I don't even know what's happening. I'm just going to run the ball. And the Chargers have struggled against the run. They were without their best linebacker in that game. So there were a lot of reasons that happened. I would prefer not to play him, though.
Yep. I think that's totally fine. I do think that it's sort of like, okay, I'm in the game. Let's see what happens. Let's go. And then it just sort of, you have all these rushing yards. So I think it's a fair point. At the same time, yes, certainly 2 quarterback leagues. And if you were absolutely desperate, you can probably get away with him just because he will offer a floor. Might not be the 88-yard floor, but he'll offer a floor with his rushing. All right, let's get to tight end here. Who is your number 1 tight end pickup on the week, Tags?
No, it's not Cole Kmet, but it's Austin Hooper. It's very close, though. I'll be honest. It's right there. It's Austin Hooper against the Jets. I mean, if you have the opportunity to get Hooper, like I don't know why he's available in as many in the high percentage of leagues that he is available in, but if he is, you play him against the Jets. I mean, historically bad against tight ends this year. They're allowing 8.88 yards per target, which is the league high. They've allowed a touchdown every 8.1 targets to tight ends. That's the second highest in the league. So it's just it's all bad. Austin Hooper.
Yeah, it is for me as well. What about you, Yates?
Yep, I've got Austin Hooper at 1.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Hooper, again, it's really hard to sort of hold these guys when you're not 100% going to play them. And Hooper really, had been kind of disappointing. He had missed the week before with an injury. So you can see guys going off. He's available in about half of leagues. So I wasn't that surprised that he was widely available. Again, he really had that nice stretch where he was getting a huge target share for a little while, and then the appendicitis and all that sort of knocked him off. Anybody else who you're looking at, I'll go to you, Yates. Anybody other than Hooper again, it's a 1-week streamer. That's all we're looking at right now. Hooper's clearly on top. Anybody else remotely looking at?
Right, he's all these guys are in the streaming conversation, and they're going to be low-end streamers. Where guys like Dalton Schultz, Jordan Reed, tags, blurted out Cole Kmet, and he's someone that I think that you can consider up against Jacksonville, and it's because of the matchup. If you're, again, with the streaming tight end conversation, you're looking at the matchups and you're looking to exploit them. The New York Jets and the Jacksonville Jaguars, terrible against opposing tight ends. So Cole Kmet here, the concern, we talked about it with Trubisky. What happens if Chicago only throws the ball 23 times again? Is that going to be enough volume for Cole Kmet? But back-to-back games of 7 targets earlier before this last week, I think that you can plug him in, but again, you're just hoping that he gets back to that target volume and that he is able to find the end zone. But he's a low-end streaming option for me.
What about you, Tex? Did you actually want to talk about Kmet?
Yeah, I want to bring him up because it's something I think everybody needs to know is that they're going to look and they're going to see 2 targets last week and they're going to panic and they're going to say, oh, that was a waste of a waiver wire pickup. I don't know if that's the case. They only threw the ball 21 times, so there was never going to be a whole lot of targets for him. But here's the thing you have to know. Cole Kmet played every single snap. Every one. I'm not kidding. 100% of the snaps. That doesn't happen with tight ends, like ever. He's on the field all the time against the Jaguars. As Yates mentioned, they're a team that is right up there with the Jets in terms of how bad they've been against tight ends. Tight ends are averaging legit in regards to that tool that I'm talking about. They've averaged almost a half a PPR point more per target against the Jaguars than they have in non-Jaguars matchups. So do we view last week as an outlier because Mitch Trubisky has not played well against Mike Zimmer's defense? Do we say against the Jaguars we want to keep the train rolling? And it has been a thing with Matt Nagy in the past where he does try and take advantage of the matchups where Trubisky can have like some confidence builders. We've seen that over the years, and that's why we've seen Trubisky throw for 3+ touchdowns in 3 of his starts this year. So I do believe that there's a chance, and this Bears offense suddenly has scored 30+ points in 3 straight games.
Yep.
The Jaguars have allowed 30+ points, I think, in 4 straight games as a defense. The Bears have a team implied total of 27 right now. It might go up as the week goes on, but there's a good chance for him to score playing 100% of the snaps, so I do like Kmet.
Man, well, if you win your fantasy championship and you pick up Cole Kmet this week and you stream him and that gets you your championship, please screenshot it. I think we will all give you a pat on the back, and I'll be very excited. Let's go to your top 5 waiver wire pickups overall. Let's go to you, Yates. Who are your top 5 overall?
Yeah, so at number 1, we talked about it. It's Jalen Hurts. I'm not making the same mistake twice. Jalen Hurts at 1, Rashard Higgins at 2, Russell Gage at 3, Salvon Ahmed at 4, and Austin Hooper at 5.
How about you, Tags?
Jalen Hurts at 1, Salvon Ahmed at 2, Rashard Higgins at 3, Austin Hooper at 4, and Cole Kmet at 5.
Man, we were so close to all having the same exact top 5 in one way or another. I've got Jalen Hurts as number 1, Russell Gage as number 2, Salvon Ahmed as number 3, Rashard Higgins as number 4, and Austin Hooper as number 5. Top QB and DST streamers, as always, we have basically broken down the QB streamers. There are no real streamers. It is just who's good at this point.
Right.
For this next week, it is Hurts, of course, if he's available. Tags mentioned Mayfield if he's available. And we talked about Trubisky, who, I think in a pinch you can go back to the well on. Anybody else, guys, that we're missing?
Not really.
Think so.
Wonderful. DST, let's go. Tags, who's a DST you are willing to play in Week 16?
Why is Washington continually not rostered? I mean, every single week I look over there and it was 35% this past week. I know they were going against Seattle, but this is a team that's generated 4+ sacks in 5 of their last 8 games. They forced, I think it's 10 turnovers in their last 5 games. And the Panthers, meanwhile, Teddy Bridgewater has been sacked 3+ times in 6 different occasions. So Washington against Carolina, I'm willing to go there.
Yeah, I mean, Teddy's been sacked 7 times in the last 2 games. This seems like an ideal spot to play a guy. And again, I think that's why, Tags. I think really you just cycle through defenses. That's what most fantasy managers do, especially now. We're not worried about the competition. Didn't want to start them against Seattle, so that's fine. How about you, Yates? Is Washington your pick?
It's not, but it's definitely in consideration. There's actually a few good options that I think you can go with. I'm going to go with Arizona up against San Francisco with Nick Mullins or C.J. Beathard or whoever is at quarterback. This offense is struggling, and I think that Arizona can create some pressure here and force a couple of turnovers. So Arizona, and then also Philadelphia is in consideration up against Dallas.
Yeah, okay. I like it. Good job, guys. Washington was the one that were on my list. All right, time for drop or keep. So this is basically what it's going to do. You're going to drop someone because you're not going to start them this week, most likely, and you are okay with your opponent picking them up. Tags brought up what I liked, and Tags, I'll let you expand on it a little bit. I think it's risky to be like, I am trying to entice you to pick up this player to play against me, because I think the fantasy gods are not going to like that, generally speaking. But these guys, you have to be okay with your opponent picking up to play. So let's get started. Tags, I'll start with you. Actually, no, I'm going to start with Yates here because I want to ask Tags number 2. Number 1, Yates, are you ready?
Yep.
One of the few DSTs that I feel like people have been riding with the whole year. Are you okay? Drop or keep the Rams DST. They're up against Seattle this week.
You keep him. That last game was just such a fluke. I don't want to read too much into that. You keep him and you play him.
Tags.
You keep him.
Tags, drop or keep the guy you mentioned, Russell Wilson against the Rams.
I'd drop him. He's someone that I'd hope my opponent plays him. I think in terms of, you look at it and you say, okay, what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is that Russell Wilson has a good game against them, and a good game against them would be a top 12 performance. It would not be a league-winning performance, I can tell you that, because the Rams have allowed legitimately 2 quarterbacks to finish better than the QB 18 all season, and you'd have to go back to week 6 to find the last time that happened. So it's like this team has certainly turn things around. They haven't allowed a quarterback to throw for more than 7.4 yards per attempt since back in week 6. It's kind of ridiculous. And knowing that they're coming off of that game, that embarrassing game against the Jets, we've already seen this matchup with Russell Wilson against them. He finishes the QB 21 while throwing the ball 37 times. He had no touchdowns in that game, 2 interceptions, finished with 11.9 fantasy points. I think best case scenario for Russell Wilson this week is that he scores 18 to 20 fantasy points.
What about you, Yates? Drop or keep Russell Wilson?
I'm dropping him. I like this strategy. You're looking at the Rams allowing 192 passing yards per game and 5.5 yards per pass attempt, which is both best in the NFL. This is a very, very tough matchup. I really do not want to read too much into last week and the Jets somehow beating the Rams. I really do not know how this happened. So, yeah, Russell Wilson has not looked great here recently, and I think that he's going to end up outside my top 12 quarterbacks in the week. So, yeah, I think you can drop him. If you can get Jalen Hurts, then I think you absolutely do that.
Without question. Yates, let's assume we have no more information than we do at this very moment when you have to run your waiver claims. Drop or keep Ezekiel Elliott.
Oh, man. I'm gonna
against the Eagles.
I'm gonna keep him because I just don't like any of the other waiver wire options above him. But I don't.
I mean, it doesn't even have to be a running back, Yates. I mean, you could let's say to pick up Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I'm fine dropping him.
Tags.
I'm okay dropping him.
Yep.
I don't want to play Ezekiel Elliott even if he plays because I think Tony Pollard is going to get at least half the snaps anyways, and it's not a great matchup against Philly. And by the way, guys, breaking news as the show starts. James Conner will not play against the Bengals on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I was going to mention it just because there has to be some sort of breaking news that factors into every time. But by the time people are listening to this,
it's not going to matter.
That game has already started. But yes, hopefully, and again, I hope you guys give the same advice. People kept asking me, Conner was low on my list, obviously, so I hope that people had better options. But this was a risk, so I hope you had somebody else backing you up just in case, or Benny Snell. Tags, I agree, by the way. I'm dropping Ezekiel Elliott. There is no chance that I will feel comfortable playing him next week, and I'm not scared that my opponent would play him even if he's active. Tags, drop or keep Robbie Anderson against Washington.
I'll keep him. Wide receivers, you're searching for targets. I know the matchup is not particularly great, but I don't. He's not someone that I would prefer. Like if my opponent had like someone like, let's say it's Russell Gage in their lineup, I would rather have them play Gage than I would Robbie Anderson. So I'll say hold on to him.
How about you, Yates?
Yeah, you definitely have to downgrade him from where we've kind of viewed him all season. He's going to be a high-end wide receiver 3 in my rankings for this week, but yeah, you still keep him.
We haven't seen tonight's game yet, Yates, but drop or keep Eric Ebron against Indianapolis. Tough defense against tight ends.
Very tough defense, but I'm going to keep him. The target total should be there.
How about you, Tags?
Who is it?
Eric Ebron against Indianapolis.
You could probably find a better streamer.
Okay, ready? The only one you have to drop is Eric Ebron, and Austin Hooper is out there.
I'll take Hooper.
How about you, Yates?
I'll take Hooper in that situation, yes.
Okay, very good. Tags, mentioned it last night, so it's a tag special. Jonathan Taylor against Pittsburgh. Drop or keep?
You keep him. I think that people legitimately need to worry about that matchup. If you've been riding Jonathan Taylor, cool. But this is not it, man. I mean, I would set the over/under like legitimately for PPR points for Jonathan Taylor this week. I'd probably set it at 12.5.
Okay.
I don't think I'd feel great about it.
Yeah, it's drop or keep Jonathan Taylor.
I'm keeping Jonathan Taylor. He's not going to be a top 10 running back for me, but he'll be in my top 15.
Yeah, and there's no way I'm letting my opponent pick up Jonathan Taylor,
Right.
despite the matchup. I'm just not doing it. I'm not going to watch that game and see him bust out a 60-yard run and be like, darn it, Tags, you did it to me again. Okay, let's go to Yates. Drop or keep Tyler Lockett against the Rams.
Yeah, drop him.
Tags. That's the correct answer, by the way. The tag sigh is correct.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think he's someone that you need to drop. I don't feel the need to tempt your opponent that way because no, I'm not. No.
I'm probably not either. And I don't even have a good justification for it because, realistically, it just seems highly unlikely that if I drop Tyler Lockett, that my opponent's going to pick him up and he's going to be the reason why I don't win my championship. At the same time, yeah, I don't think I could pull the trigger. Tags, we haven't seen tonight, as I said. But again, this is mostly just based on the matchups for next week.
Sure.
Without seeing, drop or keep Chase Claypool against Indianapolis.
Keep.
Yates.
My gut reaction, if I have to go in blind off of tonight's performance, is drop him, but I don't know.
Okay. I'm going with if he scores more than 12.8 half PPR points tonight, I will keep him. If he scores
Is that what you need?
That's exactly what I need. If he scores fewer, then I'm dropping him. I'm not optimistic.
It's just a line he pulled out of thin air.
No, yeah, it's a random line, 12.8. Yes, that is what I need tonight, as we were all joking about as we debated decisions. I need 12.8 tonight. You got it, Chase Claypool. I got your back. I am not at all concerned. Let's go to you, Yates. Drop or keep Colts defense against the Steelers.
I think there are better options available. I think you can drop them if you need to.
Yeah, I mean, they've been one of the few defenses that have been started pretty much routinely all year. How about you, Tags?
Yeah, I guess you could drop.
Yeah, I think I'd probably drop at this point. Just 1 week, I'm willing to completely stream and throw everything out the window. Tags, last one, drop or keep Chris Carson against the Rams.
You'll keep him. You're not going to find a running back with his guaranteed touches on the waiver wire.
Yeah. How about you, Yates?
Yep, same thought process.
Guys, that's it. That's our last waiver wire show of the year. I mean,
is it weird that it feels good?
It does feel good. This is weird. I mean, it was good. I liked our waiver wire shows. They were actually one of my favorite shows that we did all year, especially when it was the three of us. It's been fun.
You were such a liar.
No, it's true. Absolutely. Except the ones where Yates was on, obviously. Okay. So for the rest of the week, let's just very quickly talk about the rest of the week. It's Christmas this week. You guys probably missed that, but it's Christmas this week. So we're going to have Tuesday show. Yates is going to continue to crush it on the Tuesday show. Then we're going to kind of do a mega Wednesday show, which is going to be more of the matchups-based one, since we're not going to have Dan and Kyle in the morning on Fridays. We're going to do kind of the matchup-based show where we'll touch on every player in every matchup. Tags and I will find time to fit in a DFS show at some point. And then we'll do a Sunday night recap to recap essentially the year. And then we'll get on to next week where we will be doing all sorts of great recap stuff and fun stuff. So stick with it. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the waiver wire. Don't forget that you can go to fantasypros.com/shop, get yourself a cool trophy or a belt, all that sort of stuff, and check out our hoodies and everything like that. Again, that is the correct answer shirt on their way. They'll be there soon. In the meantime, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you guys get what you need from Monday Night Football, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at FantasyPros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.